I want to thank everyone for joining us today for this DSC Reentry Lunch and Learn hosted by the Bureau of Development Services. My name is David Kuhnhausen. I'm the Bureau of Development Services Permitting Services Division Manager. I'm actually going to turn my camera off while I go through the presentation. Last time we did this, I ran into some technical difficulty. So I want to make sure we avoid that this time around. And with that, we'll get started. So again, I want to thank everyone for taking some time out of their day. I know everyone's very busy. This is some important news related to our functions in the Development Services Center that will be reinstated here in the next month or so. For some of you, the information that's being presented today is probably not new. You may have heard it from coworkers or from other industry professionals that you interact with. So apologies if this is redundant. For others, this information may be the first time you're actually hearing it. In either case, we're going to have more than enough time at the end of the meeting to ask questions. The presentation runs about 20 to 25 minutes. And like I said, that will provide enough time at the end to make sure that all questions or comments are addressed. With that, we do hope that you save the questions until the end of the presentation. At that point, you can either use the raise hand function or the Q&A or leave questions in the chat. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So we will begin offering in-person services on Monday, July 18th in the DSC. However, there are going to be some major changes to our service levels as compared to what we were offering prior to the pandemic. So prior to the pandemic, many of our customers had been asking for quite some time for us to make many of our services available electronic. And one of the benefits that's come out of this whole thing is that the Bureau of Development Services and our technology team worked very hard to make that possible and really to allow our customers during this time when we were closed to continue to submit building permits and continue to get questions answered and submit corrections and interact with us on an electronic basis. And over the course of the last 2 years, we've seen many of our customers really embrace the technology that we've put in place for them. And that's a process or availability that we don't want to move away from. We want to continue to offer those and continue to make improvements on those as we move forward. So while we will be opening up our services to the public starting on July 18th, those services, again, as you know, staff are available to answer phones or meet customers via 15-minute virtual appointments. Those are really limited to the time that our doors are open and that our staff are working. So our new electronic processes are really available 24/7, and they allow customers to submit building permits or ask for more information at their convenience. And then obviously, we will go in there after the fact and work to answer those questions. But again, that's a process that we've put in place that many of our customers have switched over to, and something that we want to continue to make improvements on moving forward. However, we need to make sure that we're addressing the needs of all of our customers. So with that, we're going to make the following changes. Our in-person services in the Development Services Center moving forward will really be limited to customers who truly need to work with us in person. Those customers include people without regular internet access, those who need language translation services and therefore may need more time with our staff or with those providing those services to ensure that permit requirements are clear, and those who we understand will probably never grasp the electronic permit process and who we know are really just one-time permit applicants. So this is really just your standard City of Portland citizen who is not in the construction industry, is not an architect, not a developer, not a contractor, not an engineer, not a builder of any kind, and they're submitting a fence permit, for instance. We know that's probably the only permit they ever apply for. And for those who we know are going to struggle with this in-person service will be available to them as well. We know this is going to be a big change for many of our regular customers, and we're really going to need some time to evaluate the process and to make sure that the customers we're helping in person, as well as the customers that we're helping electronically, continue to get as expedited a service as possible. We want to make sure that we're able to address both of the needs of those customers. As a reminder, the Development Services Center, the Bureau of Development Services, has never really done anything like this before. We've never closed the DSC for more than a few days. And by the time we reopen, it will have been 28 months since we last were open. So there's really some need for everyone's participation, assistance, and more than anything, patience as we proceed so that we can evaluate how this is working and address issues as we identify them. There is going to be a steep learning curve for not only our customers, but many of our staff who either need kind of a refresher on how services work in the Development Services Center, or staff that have been hired over the last 2 years and have no recollection or no experience as far as the DSC is concerned. So again, we're just asking for some patience. We're going to be evaluating, a week in, 2 weeks in, 4 weeks in, 2 months in, 6 months in, as we go forward to make sure that we're addressing the needs of our customers, as well as finding better ways to service those customers. So our overall hours of operation are going to be very similar to what they previously were. And those are going to be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, open from 8 a.m. until 4 p.m. And on Thursdays, open from 8 a.m. until 12 noon. So what I'm going to do now is I'm really going to focus on the 30-minute appointment row and the Tuesday and Thursday services. So as previously mentioned, those 30-minute appointments, which are essentially paper permit submittals, are going to need to be evaluated based on two criteria. One is, again, what is the need of the customer? What is the need of the customer? And then the second one is, what is the scope of the work that the customer is submitting? We will only be able to allow permits to be reviewed over the counter if they meet both that criteria. So both the need of the customer and the scope of the work being something that we can actually review during that period of time. These 30-minute appointments will not be scheduled by customers. So there's no outward-facing calendar for customers to submit their request for an appointment. This task will be done by the BDS Permitting Services staff, who will ask customers a series of questions to make sure that they are proceeding down the right permit path. These 30-minute appointments we will begin scheduling them on Tuesday, July 5th. And now going down to the row below, the 15-minute in-person appointments. These are appointments that will be offered in the Development Services Center, again, on Tuesdays and Thursdays only. And we will not have, this will be available to anyone. However, we want to make sure that customers continue to interact with us via the virtual appointments that have been up and available for over a year now, whenever possible. These in-person appointments will vary in availability based on the review group that's offering them, but overall will be available starting at 8 a.m., ending at 3:45 on Tuesday, and on Thursday, starting at 8 a.m. and ending at 11:45 on Thursday. These in-person appointments can be scheduled by our customers in the public kiosks that I'll get to in a few minutes, in the Development Services Center, or obviously from home, or from customers' homes or offices. We will open up the calendar for this service beginning on Tuesday, July 5th as well. One thing that I should mention about the appointments, I apologize, Colleen, just going back, is that there will be no same-day scheduling or walk-ins for the 30-minute appointments. In order to schedule a 30-minute appointment, that request needs to come in by 3 p.m. and it needs to be scheduled by 3 p.m. the previous day. So for a Tuesday meeting, the request and the scheduling of that meeting needs to be done by 3 p.m. on Monday. And for a meeting that is being requested on Thursday, that has to be done by 3 p.m. the previous day, being Wednesday. Again, no same-day scheduling or walk-ins, and this is really just to create predictability for our staff and making sure that they know who they're assisting, and for our customers who, again, really need this additional level of assistance, need this additional clarification and time set aside for them to proceed with as many of the technical reviews that are required for their permit as possible, to keep the number of trips down in the DSC. So again, our overall hours of operation will be 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, and 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. noon on Thursdays. During this time, the following services will be available. Those public kiosks, which I mentioned, and again, I'll get into a little more detail on the next slide. Our cashiers will be available to take payments, and we will have paper plan scanning available from our records conversion team for customers who come in, have a paper submittal, don't have an appointment. We will offer them the option to have us scan those plans and then have them work at the kiosks to upload those plans to Development Hub PDX to apply for their permit. There will be fees associated with that service. So we encourage anyone that has the availability to do this from home or from the office to continue to do so. Our virtual 15-minute appointments went live in April of 2021 and are currently available. They're a very popular service that we've stood up, and we've received really good feedback about those over the course of the last 12 months, I guess, or no, 14 months. We've hosted over 12,000 virtual 15-minute appointments, and again, with overall really good feedback about this. So we want to continue to encourage customers who have that availability to request those. That means that there's no need to come down to the Development Services Center, find parking, come in, meet with us for 15 minutes, and then go about your day. So those are available as time-certain appointments. So the public kiosks are something that we're just enhancing what was previously available in the Development Services Center. And so there will be a number of kiosks that are going to be available on a first come, first served basis. There will be no appointment required or needed to utilize those kiosks. The services that are shown on this slide are just some of them that we're going to be making available, but this is not a holistic list of those services. The list of programs, the list of what we are going to provide via those kiosks is probably going to change over time as we offer new or improved services that our customers also need access to. What is not available on the kiosks is, payments. So we cannot accept payments on those kiosks. We have, for anyone who previously worked or visited the DSC, they're pretty familiar with what the blue slip process looks like, and it's really just a slip that our staff fill out for customers to then take to the cashier and make payments. That process and that process will still be in play when we reopen. 15-minute appointments are not yet available on these kiosks, though this is a service that we want to provide for customers who would potentially come in without an appointment and would need to ask questions of staff maybe more immediately. That's, again, not going to be available starting on July 18th, but it is something that we have made the request to look into and to make available for those customers. And the scanning and printing from these kiosks is something that we are still working through. We are happy to provide documentation for services that we provide or quick step guides, but we do need to make sure that there's not large scale records requests that are coming through this screen. The permitting services staff will be working at these kiosks to provide general assistance for customers that are applying for a building permit, customers that are applying for a trade permit, customers that are submitting records requests. What we won't be doing is doing like a plan check prior to a customer uploading a permit request to Development Hub PDX. And we want to make that clear. This is not a way to necessarily bypass the intake process. This goes into a general queue just with everything else. So again, if you have the availability to do that from home, that might be a more efficient way to process those requests. One major change that's coming out of this is, as I mentioned, we will have permitting services staff available for trade permit questions or resource records questions. And or those services will be available on the kiosks. With that, the counters that we previously had for customers making resource records requests or applying for trade permits will no longer be staffed. We were going to close those counters. Customers that are looking to get more information about those will be directed to the kiosks. So another large change that will be impacting both our customers and our staff is that, as I mentioned, the Bureau of Development Services has worked really hard to provide services electronically. And with that, we are no longer going to be physically taking in plan sets and routing them to reviewers' desks. That's a system that we set up, prior, that we had utilized for years and years, but as staff have more availability to do work from home and more availability of getting access to those plan submittals immediately, we no longer are going to be taking in those large scale plan sets. Or I should say, are no longer going to be taking in any sort of plan sets. Over the course of the last 26 months, we've set up approximately 15,000 building permits. Only about 1% of those have been in paper. So it really shows that many of our customers have embraced the electronic permit process. And again, we want to continue to make improvements with that process and continue to make that a more viable, more efficient avenue for those customers who have that availability, and leave the in-person services to those who truly need to work with us in person. What we hope this translates to for those customers working from home is that it no longer requires, like I said, four large plan sets to be printed out, no longer need to fill out your application, the building permit application and all associated applications in physical formats. Don't need to come down to the DSC, find parking, lug all of those in, wait for an unforeseen amount of time in the Development Services Center until we get those set up, and then we'll go through the whole process like we previously did. It also means that when submitting corrections, there's no need to come down to the 1900 building and go through that process of swapping out pages on the second floor like we previously had. So this is a more efficient, we hope this is more efficient for our customers, and that they can do all of this at their convenience. And also at issuance, not needing to come down here and make that, go through that final process and go to the second floor and get that final plan set and carry it out the door. So it is going to be a change for many of our customers, but we think we'll have more time for staff to actually look at the plans rather than waiting around for a plan set or making those corrections to a plan set, or potentially having a plan set that is not updated because it was, previously it wasn't complete. So big change, but a much more efficient process for all. So for those of you, I apologize that this is a little bit small. For those of you who are familiar with the DSC, who have interacted there before, we wanted just to provide a kind of a layout of what the new kind of model looks like. There probably will be some minor tweaks to this between now and July 18th, but this schematic really shows what the layout of the DSC looks like. And really, it's a more streamlined approach. There's not so much of a maze. We're trying to keep all of our customer service booths in one particular area. You can see there, as you come in, the first screen, second screen area are largely unchanged. The area that customers previously waited, that is now where the public kiosks will be located, and the review booths are up, I guess, to the east there, running along that wall. So it provides less area to get lost for our customers, and a little bit better area or a little bit better separation of staff versus customer areas. Again, for those of you who recall where the records and trades counters were, those are no longer going to be counters that are staffed. It doesn't show what our customer area looks like our staff area looks like in the back, but we will have staff available at those booths for anyone that has an appointment on Tuesday and Thursday throughout the day. This is not a full-scale remodel like we previously had been planning prior to the pandemic. We really need to just evaluate what this reentry plan, or how the plan actually comes to fruition, and what the services look like when we reopen. And we'll probably need to adjust. So we're going to be proceeding with this, and then acknowledging that there may be some changes made to the DSC layout as we move forward, or after we get some time of stabilization and we can evaluate what our actual in-person services look like and what our customer needs are, there may be something more large scale down the road. But at this point, because we don't know exactly how this is going to play out, this is going to be the plan moving forward, again, with potential changes if we identify some issues that need to be addressed. So some essential dates that have been highlighted, but we want to make sure to reiterate: our in-person scheduling of 30-minute appointments in the DSC, as well as the in-person 15-minute appointments, will begin being offered on Tuesday, July 5th. Our reentry date, so the date that the 1900 building really is open for customers, is Monday, July 18th. And our in-person services, so those 30-minute appointments and 15-minute in-person appointments, will begin being offered on Tuesday, July 19th. So in conclusion, really what we're looking to do as we re-enter the building and have customers re-enter the building is just a better overall customer experience for those who really need that in-person service, a more efficient use of our time for both our staff and our customers, namely those customers who would come down and wait in the DSC to be helped by all of the review groups, but without any predictability. So it's a more efficient use of those customers who are actually coming down, who actually need to work with us in person. And then again, continuing to make sure that customers who have the ability to submit new requests electronically do so. We're continuing to make improvements on that side of the house, and want to make the online process as seamless as possible. Again, we're pretty much in our infancy as far as electronic permitting goes, even though it has been 2 years. We still have a long way to go to make this just as efficient as possible. So we're continuing to evaluate how to do so, and we'll continue to make changes over time. So with that, we've really come to the end of the presentation. Thank you all for participating. It looks like there are going to be some questions in the Q&A, and I will open this up. So I mentioned, Colleen, I don't know if there was other questions, but I can just read through these.
Okay, just those two so far.
Okay. So Dawn, you mentioned a tiny fraction of permits are still processed on paper. What are the criteria that might necessitate that? I'm wondering if I should purge my stapler, red markers, stamps, stamp pads. Yes. So again, that's a not yet determined scope of work that we're going to be allowing over in the DSC. But for industry professionals who have the ability to interact with us in the digital format via DevHub, we want to continue to advocate for you to do that. So yeah, the second floor, as far as marking up plans and taking out old plan sets and putting in your new pages, that process is no longer going to be something that is going to be done. So any permit that we do review in the DSC over the counter, it would never come in for review. We would require, if there is a correction needed, or if that customer doesn't make it through the whole process that day, whether it's because they run out of time, or they personally are just like, I have other responsibilities, I got to do something else, they will have to schedule another appointment to continue that process whenever it's convenient for them. So once a permit comes in paper, over the counter, it continues to go in paper. We won't be transitioning that from paper to electronic or electronic to paper. Second question is, any chance you may in the future return to over-the-counter permits for smaller projects? I was accustomed to planning to spend 4 to 6 hours completely, or are you completely moving away from that? We are as much as possible moving away from that. We want to, again, with as many customers that we have, and again, there's been 15,000 permits set up in the last 2 years. With 1% of those coming in paper, we understand that there could potentially be customers who just weren't submitting permits, but we want to continue to make that the primary path for customers who have that access. So at this point, and you can kind of see where we were on the floor plan there, we don't necessarily have the same amount of space in the Development Services Center, and we don't have the intention of just opening it up on a first come, first served basis anymore. Will FPP transition to DevHub, or will continue with email submissions? That's a good question. I don't work in FPP, so I hesitate to answer with 100% certainty. If I had to make a guess, I would say they will eventually transition over to DevHub. But that is my that is only an assumption, and I don't know when that may happen either. I apologize. I can't answer that question with 100% certainty. So it looks like we have some chats.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Okay. Thanks for the question. Will there be any way to view Amanda info online? That's a great question. We will have Amanda available in the Development Services Center, and are working with Portland Maps to get more of the information on Amanda available via Portland Maps. We want to make it more intuitive and more meaningful. A lot of the information on Amanda is not necessarily meaningful to a lot of customers, or they need additional assistance. So right now, we are not going to be doing that. But we are looking to transition more of the information in Amanda over to Portland Maps. Any way for a customer to pull through and look through microfiche records rather than submitting online? At this point, we're going to continue to go through the GovQA process. There may be some situations where, and I'm only throwing out a scenario, I don't want to speak with this with 100% certainty, that it's like a campus. So like OHSU, there's a stack of microfiche that's massive. The problem is we don't have many readers anymore, and those readers have become more and more difficult to find and maintain. As we move forward and have those scanned, I think the intention is to provide those drawings electronically rather than continuing to set aside time for customers to come in and look through those.
Hey, David, if you could just read the full question, just because we are recording it. So then.
Okay. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Yeah. Next question is, any outreach to neighborhoods about the new permit process and DSC opening? So we are going to be reaching out to a number of neighborhood associations. We're working with the Empowered Communities team to provide some documentation for them to share with their customers. We also are working with the property compliance section to do the same. So we do want to reach out to those groups and provide more information, because those are really the customers. They work with customers who may need to utilize our online services and our in-person services, and may not have obviously the ability to look at our website and see what those services consist of. So yes, we are. Question is, are there plans to expand the SPP, which is simple permit projects, procedures, and publish the criteria for a permit to qualify? Not at this time. We will be obviously sharing the criteria for over-the-counter permits, but that's really where we're focused right now. As far as SPP that are submitted electronically, that has been something that's kind of been working well. I think we need to come back to it, but obviously our focus has shifted to what will we really be allowing to be reviewed in the DSC over the counter. So more to come on the SPP procedures and criteria, but right now it's just kind of a secondary focus.
There's another question in the Q&A.
Okay. Question is, there are times when hands-on access to the records is very important for specific discovery. Records clerks don't have the expertise to find certain specific elements required by architects and engineers. That is true. We would be sending all of the information to the applicant, to the requester of that information. We would not be parsing through it for specific information. It would be, here's everything, rather than, tell us what you're looking for, we'll find it for you. We would not be doing that. Are those yellow, white, black Nike high tops for sale? For the right price, sure. Just let me know your size and I'll send you my Venmo and then we can talk. No, unfortunately they're not. They're just for looks. Thanks for the offer though.
I don't see any other questions or anybody having their hands raised.
Okay. Well, we did get through the presentation relatively quickly, and we're happy to let's see, I think something else. Yeah. Thanks, Dan, for the question. Obviously, this information is new. We do think that this is the best approach moving forward. Again, there is going to be some learning curves for both customers that are regulars or who interacted with us in the Development Services Center on a regular basis. However, we really are looking at what's the most efficient way to have both our customers and our staff work through these processes as we move forward. And again, after being closed for 28 months, this is probably the best opportunity to make some of these large changes. And again, there's going to be some learning curves for all involved, but we really do hope that this is more efficient process for everyone involved.
I just want to point out that Ken posted the website link into the chat. So anyone who wants can grab that link.
Thank you. I'm not sure I covered everything. So if there are other questions that come up, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions. We're moving forward with our re-entry date. It's very firm at this point. Excited to kind of rip the Band-Aid off, so to speak, start assisting customers again and get back to some regular interactions with the public in the Development Services Center. And again, thank you everyone for taking some time out of your busy schedules to join us today and to participate in this lunch and learn. I hope it was informative and look forward to seeing you all, whether it's in person or via these type of lunch and learn events in the future. So thank you again.